Evening, everyone. We'll get going in a couple of minutes. We have to wait anyway because our first agenda item, we're still waiting for Kaushal to join us. I think we're going to get going now. We'll come back to our first agenda item in due course. Evening, everyone. It's Paul Crickler. This is the CB8 Roosevelt Island Committee meeting. Welcome to the meeting. I think I'd like to jump to REOC updates and go straight to Bryant, please. If you could please unmute Bryant Daniels, please.
All right. You can mute yourself now.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bryant Daniels, Communications Director with the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. It's a pleasure to join you guys once again for CB8 Roosevelt Island Subcommittee. A couple of quick updates from us. First, I just want to thank anybody on the call who might have made it to this morning's Pride flag raising event we did on the island. June, as you all probably know, is Pride Month, and we have a wonderfully inclusive community here on Roosevelt Island that I think really embraces the LGBTQIA community. And this year, for the second year in a row, we did this really nice Pride flag raising ceremony in Blackwell Plaza. Part of our interim leadership team, Gerald Ellis, who's also on this call, gave some really nice remarks. We had some speakers from the community share what this month means to them and how important it is. So it was just really nice. We have some stuff on our social media accounts from the event. So I encourage everybody to take a look. And we will also, at some point this month, be lighting the iconic Roosevelt Island Lighthouse in Pride colors. We're working on that, and we'll let folks know when that's happening, so that I know that's a big draw and people really like seeing it, and we're always happy to do it. So again, thanks everybody for joining us this morning. Another upcoming event we have is Roosevelt Island Day. That's going to be this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. On Meditation Lawn and Blackwell Plaza. It's a huge family-friendly event. We do it every year. A lot of fun amusements for kids, a lot of food, a lot of great community groups tabling. It's really just kind of a celebration of the island, and we're excited for that as well. So we hope to see everybody this Saturday. I just want to point out last week, I think it was, we did our most recent issue of the Roosevelt, the REOC newsletter. That's a really nice place for folks to get updates about a lot that we have going on internally at REOC and some of the stuff you may see around the island, but you don't necessarily know who's working on it and stuff like that. This past month, we really highlighted the grounds and horticulture team, who've done a really nice job, I think, of making the island, beautifying the island during the warmer months. Some wonderful new plantings around the island that look really nice. And so we wanted to give them their kudos and thank them for all of their outstanding work. Our maintenance team as well has been working nonstop, fixing different, everything from potholes and Z-bricks to they added a wonderful new pathway up near Kohler for Kohler residents to utilize. Access to the waterfront was something that the residents up there had been looking for quite some time. And our team was able to create a nice pathway and a new crosswalk for them up there. That was finished this past month. So we are excited about that. We're happy that we were able to get that done. Also, another thing we talk about in the newsletter, Cy Opperman, our longtime transportation director, has retired, but he has not gone that far. He is still working for us part-time in a advisory capacity, I suppose it is. But he's been an institution here for so long, and we obviously wish him the best. It's no easy feat to fill Cy's shoes, but we'll do the best we can. And yeah, the only other thing I guess I would point out is we're still working on Eleanor's Pier. I'm sure everybody has seen the fencing that's gone up around there. The railings around the pier have degraded over time. Being in a marine environment like this, it's going to happen after 30 some odd years. And we are still working out the plans for when we'll be fixing it, how long that might take. It's probably going to be months. And so unfortunately, it's probably going to be off limits for a while. But stay tuned for that. And I think that's it. The only other thing I would mention is Kohler is doing another visioning session for their berm project. And I believe it's been moved now to June 10th. We put it up on our social media channels as well, but we encourage everybody to join that call as well if they have the opportunity. And I think that's it for me. Thanks, Paul.
Bryant. Anybody have any questions for Riok, for Bryant? Yes, let's go to Judy, please.
It wouldn't be a meeting without Judy asking me something.
No, isn't the Kohler visioning this week, this Thursday at 1?
I think she did. I believe she emailed us today saying that they moved it.
Wow. If you just sent out a notice, I saw the notice.
Double check the notice, and I'm going to look right now as well.
You're
Yeah,
probably-
they moved it to Monday, June 10th, 6 to 7, virtual visioning session.
So that's not the one for residents, because the one that they were doing with residents and people was in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think that's the one. I think they moved it to a virtual session in the evening. Let me double check with Sophia
Okay, thank you.
or Laura.
Or Laura. Okay.
So anything else, Judy?
No, I'll just stay quiet for a few minutes. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, actually, I just want to say while we have Bryant here and Brandon, I've been to at least, I think, 2 of the jazz behind the library sessions in the last couple of weeks, and it's so nice there. Even when it was raining, people were sort of sitting in those nooks formed by the building. So thank you so much. This stuff, and there was a big crowd last time. It's like 30 plus people because it was nice weather as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank Brandon for hosting. It's a great place to have it.
So let me turn over to Kaushal Shah. We're going to hear about where we are with the Citizen Project. And also, Brian, you may want, well, I'll leave it to Kaushal to talk about that, but transit, obviously, we want to hear about buses and things and transponders. Can you please unmute Kaushal here?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I think you all know who I am, but just in case you don't, I'm the founder of the Citizen Project. And so the goal of our organization is to look for ways where technology can help improve the lives of residents on Roosevelt Island. And so for the last 4 or 5 months, we've been looking to build a platform to start helping centralize a lot of the information and make, based on different use cases, make the lives of our residents easier. We've also partnered with Treba to kind of accelerate some of our development efforts. And so what I thought I'd do is, I know I came back and gave you an overview of a deck. I wanted to actually show you some of the initial designs. They're very preliminary, but I thought I'd share the designs with this group and get some feedback. All right, so with that being said, is it possible to share my screen? I don't know who's,
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
yeah, okay.
I had to step away. Did I miss something?
No, I'm just, I'm giving a demo of the initial designs that we have for the platform. I can't show a specific app. I can only show my entire desktop. Okay, well, it is what it is. All right, so can everyone see?
Yes, I can see that.
So there's the first one that we're focused on is sort of merging the visitor experience with the resident experience in terms of centralizing all the information and being enabling the residents to search all the services on the island and take advantage of that. And so what you're looking at is sort of that preliminary design. The first thing you come in is you see sort of the map, and that becomes the basis and the foundation of where we overlay all sort of different types of data for residents and visitors to navigate. So for the visitors, you have really three things. You have getting here, which is how, if you're coming to Roosevelt Island, and that one's kind of blank at this point, but how do you get here? What are the modes of transportation? What are things you need to know before you come here? Then while you're here, you're exploring the island. And then when you're done, you're heading back. Now the residents will have some sort of view of this that doesn't have getting here and going back, but mainly the main function of the application will remain the same. So you come here, we are working with organizations on the island to determine what highlights are. So what are the highlights of the island? And that's sort of subjective, but we're trying to work with our partners to figure out what that is. So you would click on highlights and you can see all the highlights on the map. There's also things to do. So things to do can be broken down by activities, nature walks, and so on. So, you can have highlights, things to do. Also walking paths. That's very popular on the island, especially because we have a unique sort of geographic location, water on both sides and so on. And so we also have walking paths as well. And if you select any of these, it takes you to sort of that details page where you can get more information on the resource. You can also search. So if you search, you can start searching everything on the island. And this is merging lots of disparate data sets from Google and others to bring it all together, including our customized data sets. So things that we think are very salient about the island also can be integrated to one point. So you'd come here, and this is all just a demo, but you'd come here and it'll be all the services and points of interest on the island. Click on the coffee shops or cafes. You'll see the search for the coffee shops. You click on the coffee shop and you see the details page. And then you can also navigate to it as well.
That's fantastic.
So going back, we also have this view, but if you want to have more of a sorting and, kind of have a list view, there's a button here that also allows you to have a list view. So we categorize, highlights, things to do, and some of these are still preliminary. We're working with our partners to figure out what that taxonomy looks like in terms of how we categorize the services on the island, or you can just see all the services. And you can also search here as well. So you can go back and forth between those. And then also when you're leaving the island, rate your experience. So this is something that Triba wanted to know. What do visitors think when they leave? Do they have a good experience? What was the downside and so on? And then also obviously our transit app that we already built out is in here as well for them to go back. So in a nutshell, this is what it is. The other thing that we're also working on in parallel is trying to collect all the different events that are happening from REOC and other organizations into a central place, in addition to REOC alerts. So if you click on this thing on the top, and we haven't found an icon for it, but it's this sort of green thing here. You click on that and you have basically a slide down of the different alerts from REOC occurring that day and all the events as well. And we'll try to collate other things as well, and maybe Rick news and other things that we can also put in here as well that would link out to your platform. You also have emergencies. So I think this is something that I think there's a number for public safety, and I always forget what it is. So being able to instantly call public safety, this emergency. and some other kind of data points that we can put in here as well. So, and this is what we're working towards is phase one. It's really to bring all the disparate information together to make it easier for residents and visitors to navigate the island. So I will take any questions anyone has or comments.
Thank you. That looks amazing. It's so nice to see this coming to life. Two quick questions from me first. One is for you and I guess Riok. Timing of when we'll have the bus transponders feeding locations so we can get that. And then the second thing is if you can go back to the about 5 or 6 views back, when you were looking up, you were looking at something, then you hit directions and a little blue line showed where to go. Are you saying that it'll geolocate me and to where I am on the island, and wherever I am, it'll get me to that? That's fantastic.
It will, right? And also even the walking paths. So we're trying to determine what these walking paths are. So we're trying to, a walking path that kind of goes through some highlights on the island. And then you can select that and you'll have you'll have a navigation view, which will, I don't know if you can see it here. It's a little blurry, but it kind of shows you where you're on the map and then where you need to go. And then while you're walking it, it will also emphasize, what you're passing by. So if you're passing by the smallpox hospital, it'll pop up and say, here's what the smallpox hospital is. Here's more information on it. You can keep walking and then it'll go to the next one, right? So this is where these points of interest dots are.
And if you typed in the word food, all the different the supermarkets and the restaurants will pop up. So
it is, yeah. So everything will pop up. And so this is our design, but this is just to show you the real app in action. Again, don't mind, a lot of the alignment and stuff is off, but you'll come here, you can see, you can kind of scroll through it, the map, you can search, so you can see the stuff is coming up,
type in food if you wouldn't mind, see what happens with food.
So you'll have food town, see?
Yeah.
Or you'll have like food category.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of this data we're sort of collating and just pruning, right? Because it seems some of it is off. But as you can see, it's you can search by anything, right? The point of interest or category as well.
I think it's fantastic. Who else has questions? I see Margie's hand is up.
Okay, am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
You can. Okay. 2 questions. First of all, I think it's terrific, but this isn't anything that someone would have to install, right? It's just a QR code that will bring you to a website that has this information. I'm thinking of visitors who may not want to install.
That's right.
Something.
Yeah. So Treba and we're all discussed collectively. Visitors don't want another app on their phone, so they just want the other thing that we're working on, is potentially in the future kiosks as well. So when people come, they get to see it, but it'll be the same platform that we'll put on the kiosk. And, it'll kind of mimic the application.
How is it going to be updated? Because a lot of this stuff sounds good to begin with, and then it quickly gets out of date.
That's a good point. So what we want to do later this year is give sort of an access to organizations to go in and update their own services. So you can update the content, you can put in alerts and news and things like that, and it would automatically be populated when people are searching for it.
Okay, thank you.
And I mean, that's for points of interest, but if things like walking paths and highlights, what we're trying to do is maybe form a committee, and maybe this is partnership with this group as well, to maybe form a governance committee in terms of the content about the island, right? And how we maintain it, and make sure it's up to date.
Thanks very much, Kushal. Judy, please. And then Brandon.
I hate to be snarky. The Historical Society has run a visitor center here for 18 years. I have never heard from you, Kaushi. I think I gave you my contact information. No one ever comes into us, who today had 300 visitors come in and talk to us. What does it take to ask the people who know about visitors, who know where people want to go, who've done all this work, who've done all this research, who know the routes, who know what to tell people? You're reinventing the wheel. All you have to do is come to us. We can give you a simple, a typical visitor's view and outlook and what people want to see and what people want to do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have it. We've been doing it for 18 years. This is very nice, but the map has to be simple because this is much, much, much too complex. And it's frustrating because we've been doing this. Somehow we manage to get thousands of visitors a year, and you never come to us. REAC doesn't come to us. No one comes to us to say, what are the visitors asking for? What do the visitors want to do? And I mean, we can give you all this information. We can sit down with you in a few hours and give you the basic information of where people want to go, what they want to do, how they want to spend their money, etc. So, it's very frustrating to see that you're reinventing a wheel, and we're Fred Flintstone. Our car's been around forever. So, I mean, really, you have a lot of resources. I'm sure Brandon at the library knows how many people come into the library and ask for information. And all of us know. You don't have to be researchers. Just ask the people who are here who've done business. That's my comment. Thanks.
So two things, Judy. So one is the map. We've hired someone to actually design the map. This is sort of a placeholder. But to your point, we may have the wrong email for you because Rebecca from my team contacted you. So did Jordan from Treba and myself a few times, and we haven't received any response. It might be that I don't have the right email. That's fine.
No excuse. Come on. People know who I am. Walk in the visitor center.
Judy, I think the point that Cliff was making is that they believe they sent you messages. So the intention is they wanted to bring you in. So I think they'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is the right time as well, because you've got the bare bones built, and now's the time to talk to people.
To design another map is an enormous responsibility. We could probably work with our graphic artist who was redoing our map at the moment, and we're discussing it with him. If he would give us permission to use it once it's updated, there would be the map completely updated. It's already 99% done. We just need changes in it. If we could get permission from him to use that, it would save you thousands of dollars and a lot of effort if we have a perfectly good map.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why I wanted to reach out to you. This is the first thing we thought about when we thought about highlights and the history. I think it's a rich history on the island, and only you have this content. And so Becca did a lot of research on our team and came to you and said, okay, let's start working together to start curating the island and the experience. But anyway, if please, I will send you my email. I'll CC Paul, so there's proof that you respond, and then we'll get together as soon as possible.
You'll find me probably on the police 10 most wanted list, but I'm here. Okay.
All right, sounds good, Judy.
All right. Brandon, please.
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, again.
All right. So I would like to say that I'd be happy to facilitate a meeting. If you guys want a meeting space, you're more than welcome to come down to the library. And I would like to attend that meeting too, if you guys would, be so inclined. But no, this all sounds great, but definitely I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel and good communication. So if the library could be a hub for you all to get together, I'd definitely like to support that. Also, additionally, just to clarify, so this wouldn't be a standalone app. It would be a standalone web page that would then be put into kiosks. Did I get that right?
Yeah. So for the visitors, we don't want the app. I think it's a nuisance for them. They might never come back, right? So it's just while they're here, it's a web app, right? For the residents, we are building a web app. That's going to allow you to put your own profile, right? And then we're going to personalize the services for you, so you can take advantage of activities and so on. And while we curate that things on the back end, every time there's updates, right? If you're interested in something based on your preferences, you get notified, right? So we'll have a much more customized, personal experience for residents through a mobile app.
Okay, no, that's great. If you want to take my email, it's my first and last name at nypl.org. Definitely, I'm happy to host both of you guys, obviously, and I would like to be privy to
that. We've been looking for a space, and I don't know if Jane's here, but we couldn't get Tech. But yeah, it'd be nice if we can get the library.
We have a nice community room.
Yeah, no, I've seen it, but also other organizations as well. So I think Riva and others wanted to attend as well. So let's coordinate time in the next few weeks. Yeah,
definitely. And then also, I wanted to say, Paul, we had 72 at the last people at its height at the last jazz show.
Fantastic.
Just a humble brag.
I left about 45 minutes in. That's fantastic. Nice one.
Thank you.
And just so you know, also, wasn't sure if Kaushal made that point. When somebody gets off the tram, there's going to be a big kiosk or something with a big QR code, and just then this stuff comes up from that QR code.
And just one last thing here on you mentioned the red bus, right? So I don't know if Bryant is still here, but that's something, Bryant, I think they had spoken to Gerald and others in Rioch, Manhattan related. And so I think once we're ready for it, we'll come to you for the APIs for the red bus. We're working right now on the Q102. So in about, I would say a month, we'll have that Q102 going around the
Right.
island. It's there, right? And then once we get the Red Bus API, we'll have the Q102 and Red Bus real time live on the map.
So we'll see times as well as the visual
The
location on the map.
times, right, from where you're at, but also the visual where the bus is on the island. So
That
cool
sounds
stuff.
fantastic.
Cool stuff coming. Yep. So
Brilliant.
we're about, in terms of timeline, we're about a month and a half to alpha, and then we'll start reaching out to all of you here to get on the alpha and beta, and then sometime in the fall, early fall, we're thinking about the full release.
Brilliant. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you so much for coming to join us today, Kaushal.
Of course,
So
happy
the
to be here.
next thank you. The next agenda item is called Farmers Market. This is something that I've just been thinking about the last couple of weeks. I spoke to Judy about this. It's about Israel Wengard, who is our farmer, whose family and people who work for him come and do our farmers market. And I was thinking about him a lot the last few two visits, and I realized. So Judy told me he's been coming for 35 years. So as a boy and a man, right? And his kids come. Now they leave the farm or where they live at 12 o'clock at night on the Friday night. They get to us about 2:33 and start setting up. Jimmy's told me that because he's seen them. They work all day and they do an amazing job of keeping the place set up well, easy access for people. They clean it all the time. They keep it orderly. They leave the place spotless. They then drive home 3 hours. They presumably their work hasn't stopped. But I was thinking more about how not just how wonderful the market is and how nice the people are who service us, but the numbers here. Basically, 1/7 of his life, Israel, for 35 years, maybe you call it like 1.5/7, has been to provide us and to be here, providing the market to us. That's a significant part of his life. And so the point I'm getting to is I'm going to suggest that we do something for him to honor him and to say thank you to him. There's a couple of things I've thought of, and I'm talking to Jimmy. We'll try and do something in September, October, where we'll say a few words to him. I'm talking to the people in the PTA about doing the kids producing something to show the farmers market in context of the island. But for the purpose of this committee, so right now I'm looking at Sharon and Judy as representatives of this committee. I have a resolution. I won't read out all the whereases. It's not going to be a traditional, hopefully boring looking resolution. It's going to talk about the nice things that he does. But it's a very simple resolution at the end. This community relishes the opportunity to thank Israel Wengard, his family, the cashiers, and all the other staff for all the years of dedicated service to this community. And so I've completely forgotten if I've done this the right way around. Maybe all of them have been doing something wrong, but it's just the three of us. I'd like to propose a resolution. I'd like to take it to full board. I'd like it to go to full board at the end of this month. So we have it ready for after the summer, whenever we can get around, get all the other stuff arranged. Judy.
His real
Can you
anniversary.
unmute Sharon, please, as well, Rose?
Yeah. First of all, don't say cashiers, staff, workers. Other than that, his real anniversary is this month. I interrogated him the other day, and he came in June of 1989. So maybe in June we should give him a birthday cake and have a big
That'd be
celebration later. I think we can find him a birthday cake for one of the Saturdays in June, because that's his real anniversary. September, October, it's not as much fun. And I think it would really be a surprise for him and his staff, because after June it gets pretty quiet here.
Well, indeed, we couldn't rush to get this stuff, particularly like the school's closing down soon.
That's
so
different, but we can do that in the
we can
fall.
do something from now. It'd be lovely. Anybody else
Right.
want to say anything on this? Anybody like to propose this resolution?
I like to propose the resolution.
Anyone to second it, Sharon?
Mhm.
Anyone
Sharon.
intending to vote no? Will, have we just passed this here?
Yeah.
Great.
It's unanimous, 3 to
Thank you
0.
very much. Thank you, everyone. So
Question.
yes, Judy.
Is Brian still on the meeting? Brian from RIAC?
I don't.
Yes, he is.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, he is. Hi, Brian. How about
Yes.
making it Wengard Farm Day one day, Roosevelt Island Farm Day or something, Wengard Farm Day?
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, come on.
Nice
I-
idea.
How about International Fruit and Vegetable Day of Roosevelt Island? Something fun, because RIAC can get a big banner put up by the church and, make it a fun day. Why not? I mean, I mean.
Listen, we can
Place to go to where there's no controversy on this island.
Somebody will find
I don't know
controversy
that
somewhere.
anti-farmers market crowd is going to come out in full force.
You
And
mean the
they're gonna-
Frito Banditos are gonna show up?
There'll
And
be
then they're
Judy.
gonna
Judy, there'll be
Yes, we can
somebody on
talk
this island who will find some reason to think it's a bad idea. You know there is somewhere. You just haven't heard from them yet. And Brian, I hadn't mentioned this to you yet because it's just something that's been taking shape the last few days. Near the time, I was going to come to you and if you wanted to join in doing something with us, if we ever wanted to. But the idea is to get a bunch of people hiding the other side of the church so that we can, when he closes up, bring him round there and do something with him.
that's nice. Yes, we'll talk about it.
Good. Anybody, anything else on the farmers market? Thank you. So moving on to the master lease. I'm not going to say anything because I don't know anything about the subject matter in any detail at all, but luckily we have someone here, Gerald, who knows an immense about this. Gerald's uniquely qualified in both real estate law, but also, I'm going to use the wrong words for this, urban housing law. There's probably better ways of saying all this stuff, but he knows a lot about this stuff, a lot about the master lease specifically as well. So I'm very keen for him to be here today. Those of you who live on the island, it's going to affect us all either directly or indirectly in some way, shape or form, not too far from now. The 40-year lease, it'll be up in 2068, which means 4 years from now is the magic 40-year cutoff where the banks and other institutions get very fidgety and don't want to do business with people, either the buildings or individuals. So it's important that people focus on this. That's why I'm glad to have Gerald kick this up for us. Thanks, Gerald.
Thank you, Paul. And I'm seeing some familiar faces from the last presentation. If anybody has any questions, to jump in. I didn't really prepare slides like I had at the last meeting. I talk, give you a brief update of, I guess, where we're at with this discussion, and then kind of field questions from the audience. So as Paul was explaining, the whole island is master leased from the city to the state, and that was done in 1968 on a 99-year lease. So that lease, as Paul mentioned, it's at about 44 years right now. And there's a risk that as we get closer to that 40-year mark, that banks will be reluctant to lend. If you think of a typical 3-year fixed rate mortgage, right? It's got a 30-year term, obviously. So when a bank makes that mortgage to a homeowner, what they want to see, and this gets again at this unique kind of lease structure of the island, they want to see the 30 years, at least 30 years on at least, plus some kind of way if they have to foreclose and step into possession of the property. So they will typically see 40 years for a sort of commercial grade, I should say, loan, a year runway on that ground lease. If it's a commercial, you're financing the construction of the building, a big construction loan, they actually want to see even more. They want to typically see 50 years on that ground lease term. So this is already an issue for some of the developments on the island. So Riverwalk 9, if you guys are familiar with it, you walk around the island, you see that big building that's being built right now. There were certain accommodations. Some of it you can work around, some of it you can't, right? So with that building, when it was built, obviously there's less than 50 years on the ground lease. And so because of that, there are certain accommodations that had to be made even in that lease. Basically we would have condoed out the building, but we couldn't because of this issue. And so then the lease structure is designed to mimic a condominium, put simply. So this is already, my point of bringing all that up is to say that this is already becoming an issue for the island. Some of it you can work around, and we're still at that stage, I think now, where you can do these little workarounds. But I don't anticipate that's going to last forever. And I think, you don't even have to get to the 40-year mark for this to become a problem. Even I think at 41 years, banks are going to start becoming weary. And it's just that's the kind of situation we don't want to get to. And so the conversations on the government level are beginning already. So that's the other piece of what I want to speak to, which is an update on where we're at. And I think I've said this before, probably even at the community board, but There was a call it happened in December between the mayor's office, Councilmember Menon's office, and folks from REOC, and then some folks from the community as well were on that call. But that call was specifically about this issue of the master lease. You know, I know that at both the city and the state, it's reached the highest levels of government. So the mayor's aware of this issue, the governor's aware of this issue. And they've spoken, I think in private, but they've definitely spoken to people about this. I know that the governor is very much up to speed with this, and that this is on everyone's radar, and everyone understands how important it is that this issue gets worked out. So those, like I said, those conversations have already started. I think it's, you know, early in that process. It's a long process, takes time, months, years even. But we're in a good place. You know, it's on folks' radars. People understand the issue. They understand it's important. I don't point, at least there's been a lot of pushback to the idea of extending the master lease, which is good. And I've said this before, but I think if you're a property owner on the island, you know, I think everyone's kind of in agreement. If you own property on the island, it's to your benefit that the master lease gets extended. You know, there are issues that we can talk about and things that are sort of related to the master lease. You know, there's a lot of ways that this can go, right? But I think what's also important as we begin these negotiations and start talking about this is that we just focus on the most basic aspect of this, which is, like I said, it's about the term. This issue results from the fact that the term is going to be up well, not going to be up, but it's going to be, it's going to reach this magic number of 40 years very soon. The focus that of everybody's attention to this. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways we can go in this discussion. We can start talking about commercial space, or we can start talking about buildings exiting the system altogether. We can talk about all these other things, but I do think that those are distractions, and that at this point, considering how important this issue is, that we should just be focused on the term. That alone is a big enough lift politically, and that will take up plenty of time and plenty of effort to get that done, just to extend the term. So I think that's where I sort of line up on this, especially at this early stage. I don't know if anybody has any questions, anybody wants to jump in with comments.
I have one comment to jump in with now. I can't help
Sure.
thinking back to something that Bryant was saying when you're doing the run-up before, about all the different things that were going on, the maintenance crew here and the parks department here and all that stuff. So if the lease wasn't extended, if we reverted back to the city, we'd be beholden on to
Yeah.
with, you know, all these services,
Bolton.
sanitation and parks department and all the rest of it. So we wouldn't have little red bus necessarily. We wouldn't have the parks department every day cleaning tidying all and the AVAC again would be surplus. Maybe we'd have bags of trash on the ground because that's the way sanitation does trash. I don't know. So that's we can't assume that's going to stay, or can we?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I would not assume that any of that would stay if you know, the city or the land were to revert back to the city. And we'll have, you mentioned AVAC in that list. I mean, we'll have a little experiment with that soon, with trash being left out. We have repair work that's going to be taking place on the AVAC system on the island in the next. So there'll be piles of trash and you know, sanitation trucks coming to pick it up in the mornings. And it's definitely going to be different. I hope, you know, we're doing our best to get ahead of it and make plans so that it doesn't become an issue. But that's the sort of thing, for instance, that I think you would see a lot more if it were just the city running the island.
And what would worry me is my ability to get something done would be, you know, very small, you know, as one of 12,000 people amongst a district of whatever size we're throwing with. Anyway, enough about me. Anybody else have questions or comments or their own thoughts about this master lease? Can't believe it.
Just to that comment too that Paul made right now, just real quick. I saw a tweet the other day, and it was some development on the Upper East Side, and it was one census tract, and it was a 3-block development. It was a 3 city blocks on the Upper East Side. The population of those 3 blocks was 12,000, or excuse me, 6,000. That was the population of that census tract. So you know, to put it in perspective, I think Little Roosevelt Island is 12,000 people, right? So about the equivalent of 6 city blocks on the Upper East Side. And I think, frankly, that the amount of attention and care that gets put in is pretty extraordinary, considering. I can assure you from working in government that, you know, there's no 6-block chunk of the Upper East Side that receives the amount of attention that Roosevelt Island does. And it doesn't have the budget that we have. It doesn't have the police force that we have, or the Parks Department, or you name it. And I'll say this to Rick, I know your hand's up, but you know, I work in real estate. Traditionally, that's my background, and in affordable housing. And there's just this principle in real estate that the more you have a unified ownership structure, the more good you can do with that. It gives you a lot of leverage. And once you break up a unified ownership structure like that, you can never put it back together. And it only becomes harder and harder the more it becomes fractured. So I could think of an example. I used to live on 41st Street here in Astoria. And if you look on Google Maps, I mean, I can pull it up and maybe share my screen. It's actually a great example. I talk to my students about this. I'm pulling it up right now, and I'm going to share my, if I just share my screen, I can.
I think so.
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay, cool. Let me do that. And
At that crucial moment.
I'll show you this. All right, can you guys see my screen problems?
You froze on us for a good few seconds. Gerald, can you hear me now?
Hello, can you guys?
Yeah, I can hear you, but you're very breaky. You want to dial back in again? Yeah, let's give him a second. Oh, there we are. Hello, you moved. Can't hear you now, but we're waiting for you to. Okay, Rose, do you mind?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Sorry about that. I guess that's not going to work. I tried to do it. My
What was the
computer
point
couldn't
you wanted
handle
to
it.
make?
So the point I want to make is I used to live across the street from this block of houses, and they all look the same, you know, like kind of a typical set of row houses in Queens. But there is an alley that runs in the backyard of these houses because the ownership is totally fractured. And the whole block was built all at the same time. And you can tell that if they had gone in a different direction, if they had kept this kind of a unified ownership structure, basically all the backyards of all these houses in the back could be this wonderful little park. And the value of the real estate would be infinitely more valuable if the backyards were a big park instead of what it is, which is basically an alley, an underutilized alley. And in the back of all these houses, people park their cars, some people have backyards, etc. But it's a collective action problem. A lot of real estate is a collective action problem. And you have this really unique opportunity with Roosevelt Island because you still have a unified ownership structure. There's a lot of issues that come along with it, but there's so much opportunity that comes with it as well. And I think that's how you should view it.
Thank you. Rick, please.
So what are the major issues that need to be resolved in order to get the lease extended?
Good question. So, I mean, the biggest single issue, if I had to point to one, it would be the ULURP process. So ULURP is the Uniform Land Use Review process. That's a city process that applies to the city anytime the city wants to dispose of real property. In this case, the city would be extending a lease for the island, right? So that's the city making a property disposition, And so then it has to go through the Euler process. The Euler process, if you Google it, you can read about it on Wikipedia. It's very involved. It takes a long time, at least a year, if not more. So there's the timing issue as well. And in order to even start the Euler process, you have to reach a deal in principle with the other party, right? So the state and the city, and then so there's that too, right? This is another issue, is the political horse trading of this, right, between the city and state. So once the city and state have reached an agreement in principle, then you can put that process through Euler, or you can put that deal through the Euler process, I should say. So that process looks different, I think, too, if, you know, let's focus on the term of the lease, right? Let's say the term is extended for 32 years to 2100. I think that would be a different Euler process than if the term is going to be extended for 50 years or another 99. And then that's also why I think you need to focus just on the term to sort of keep it simple, keep it focused, it's also, I think, a way to get the maximum amount of buy-in from everybody to just focus on one issue rather than bringing in these other potential issues. It's hard enough to get everybody to agree on just, you know, a number for an extension of the term. So if I had to point to a couple issues and answer your question, Rick, it would be number one, Euler is the biggest issue, and then the associated timing constraints with that. And then I would say the political aspect of it too.
So what are the horse trading issues that are going to come up between the city and the state before Europe becomes an issue?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can point to some stuff that's already on the table, right? You know, specifically, I think the steam plant and the steam tunnels are part of this conversation. The city's one of the biggest city agencies still really very much active on the island is HHC, right? Kohler, the hospital. So I think a lot of, you know, Kohler's opinion matters about this a great deal. They're trying right now, as we all know, to build berm around Kohler and, you know, make a big investment in the place, make a big investment in the island, and HHC making a big investment in staying here on the island for many generations to come, right? So I think HHC as an institution is critically involved in this whole conversation. I don't think they speak for the city at all. I think the city's got a lot of diverse interests, I should say, here. But I think that they're a big part of it. And I think, you know, like I said, the steam plant and the steam tunnel, how those are handled, the berm as well.
What about future development on the island? Is that going to be wrapped up in these negotiations?
I don't think so. I mean, I would personally advocate, as I've said, against overcomplicating these negotiations. I think it's an easy way to lose support from people for one reason or another when you add anything, honestly. I'm not kidding when I say like just the number. Literally, I think if it were up to me and I could wave a magic wand, this would all be about just a number. Right now, the lease is set to expire in 2068. Let's pick a new year. And that's it. That would be the entirety of the conversation. Because like I said, I think when you add any other issues, it just makes it infinitely more complicated and you're more likely to get pushback.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's go to Margie and then Judy, please.
Okay, now you said Kohler will play a critical role. I understand what the state's doing and the city's doing, but what role do the residents play? Clearly, there'll be a negotiation. And if there's a negotiation, unless it's just, like you say, just extend the lease for X number of years, will they be extending it at the same ground rents? Or will each building have to have its own new ground rent lease made up?
Yeah, so I thank you for the question. I will say that this issue, even that call that I described, right, between the council member Menon's office, the mayor, and Brioc, I mean, that was done actually at the impetus of residents. So thank you for that. Thank you for raising this issue. I believe Councilmember Menon was on the island last October and November campaigning. The folks, island residents brought this up in that meeting. And that's what prompted her, I think, to get in touch with the mayor's office And so that's what led to these conversations really formally beginning. So thank you to the residents for doing that. I think it's also good too, from a politician standpoint, maybe that it comes to their attention in that way. I think it's for instance, I know that I've been raising this issue about the master lease for a long time, and it was one of the reasons I came to REOC to work at REOC. I think it's different when you hear about it from operational people versus when you hear about it from constituents. And I think that's part of what drives political actors, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how the system is supposed to work, right? That's somebody being responsive to their constituents. And I think it's good that Councilmember Menon set up those meetings. In terms of the residents and what do the residents get, I mean, this is ultimately for the betterment of the island. And let me put it to you in the converse, right? What do residents not get? Well, your apartments won't be able to be transacted, or they won't be saleable if nothing is done with this issue come 4 years from now. So, I mean, we're just unfortunately in this position where we have to take a huge action to even continue with the status quo on some level. And, to the rest of your question about individual buildings and renegotiations. So this is already kind of contemplated in each of the ground leases, right? That, and by each of those ground leases, I mean, each of the sub ground lease agreements with each building. So if you look at your building's agreement with REOC, or UDC or whomever it's with, that's where this idea or these issues are sort of spelled out, right? What happens if and when the ground lease for that building ends? And then also our obligations, REOC's obligations, or the state's obligations to come in and begin negotiations with ground tenants, with our buildings, if and when our own ground lease ever gets extended. So this is also the start of a big process, I think, for REOC in the state, if and when this happens, right? You got to get over the finish line. Once you get over the finish line and extend the master lease, that's actually the beginning of then years of work, I think, for REOC, because each of the individual agreements then, depending on their terms, come up for renegotiation or come up for extension themselves.
UDVs?
Okay, I'm only worried that I know it might, that I don't trust developers. That I feel at some point they're gonna find a way, especially tear down the state plant and put an apartment house there. How would a new ground lease or future ground lease protect the island from, as we say, unwanted future development and preserve our parklands and preserve our open spaces? I don't know what the ground lease could do, because I haven't read it. So Gerald, can you?
Well,
this is going to protect us from, people coming in. I really want that piece of land,
Well, a couple of thoughts, actually. I mean, I disagree with the idea that developers are the enemy or that development is the enemy. As I tell my students in my class, right, a developer built your house, right? No matter who you are, basically, odds are a developer built your house at one point. And that's just how it is. I get it that there's a profit motive. But there are all sorts of necessary services that we sell for profit on a daily basis and don't think twice about it. Water, food, you name it. I think there's something unique about housing that gets under people's skin, but we have a housing shortage in this city, in this country. And I think that we need all the housing we can get. And I, for one, am not, personally opposed to the steam plant becoming more housing. But to the rest of your point, you're talking about preserving open space. I agree with that. I think, it's our statutory mission to preserve our open space on the island, and it's in our enabling legislation, and it discusses 4 parks: the Lighthouse Park, Blackwell,
South Point.
South Point, yes, and then Octagon, yes, and Firefighters Field is the missing fifth part. So I think that much is enshrined in law, literally, and you shouldn't worry about. I do think that, you know, just honestly putting on my real estate goggles and looking around the island, there are definitely places that look like development sites. Obviously the steam plant has come up, but I mean, I think Kohler too, if you think about what happened with
Goldwater.
Goldwater, exactly, becoming Cornell. You know, I think that Kohler as a development site, you know, it looks attractive, but I will also say that if you look at what the city is doing right now, especially what HHC is doing right now with a lot of land that they have access to, it's developing supportive housing, it's developing mixed income housing. And so I think that very much fits in with the mission of REOC. You know, if you go all the way back, right, REOC's mission was to build a mixed income, mixed race community here on Roosevelt Island. And if you judge REOC just by that mission, I think it's a smashing success. And I don't want people to lose sight of that. I know that it's easy to fight against change kind of retro or reactionarily, but I think neighbors are good. I think new neighbors are good. I think having more eyes on the street is a good thing. I think having more people walking down the street with money in their pocket to spend at local businesses is a good thing. And you know, I do think that there's a little bit more room for growth on the island, but I think that those decisions are going to be made far above my pay grade. So
Oh, you
I'll leave
must
it
not,
at that.
you must not be a tram commuter. Well, I mean, it's a shame because I just feel that we're at a breaking point now with another 29-story building. And I'm looking out my window of how they have built up Queens right across from us. And that's a disaster. It's no planning, nothing. And to do, you know, to add another 30 or 40-story building on Roosevelt Island, that's all going to be luxury housing. Don't tell me it's going to be anything. It is not solving any housing crisis except for very rich people. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to have an argument with you. You're too nice a person.
Keep shooting. Can we go to Sharon, please?
Thank you. I have, I guess, a couple of comments and a couple of questions. My first comment is that I certainly appreciate development as well. However, I'm fully aware that most development in this city takes place with city and state subsidies. It is, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes. I think it's a tad bit misleading, if you will, to suggest, for example, that you know, your housing was developed by, you know, a developer. I feel like that is an incomplete sentence. You do have to say that there is a great deal of taxpayer monies that are invested in many of these developments. The second comment that I wanted to make is, I guess I'm really a little bit confused. I'm confused by a couple of reasons. One is that I still do not have a very strong sense of what the issues are that will ultimately be enshrined in the ULURP process. And I'd like to have some specificity regarding the issues. And part of the reason is that the ULURP process, although it takes a year, it's fairly pro forma. I mean, you know, honestly, if there are certain documents that you have to provide, and clearly a process that you have to go through. It is time consuming. It will take a year, but the path is laid out for you very, very clearly. And 99% of what is in that ULURP package is really decided on before the pre-application phase that will be submitted to the Department of City Planning. So I would be interested in knowing, bullet point by bullet point, what are the issues? Because you've only named 3 that I understand so far, which is the steam plant and its associated tunnels, Kohler, the berm project, and any type of future development. So that really is my first question. My second question is, what will happen if I'd like to know what will happen. I don't know what that date is in 68, but let's just say that June 15th is, June 15th, 68 is the deadline, and we do not have something in place June 16th. What are you suggesting, for example, that any type of funding that is directed to Roosevelt Island will cease, and REAC will not be able to administer to the island in the absolutely wonderful way that REAC has been doing all along? Are you suggesting that it's going to absolutely stop?
Basically, yes. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but yeah, I mean, if nothing were done, right, and the lease were just to simply expire, it's not that REAC would, as an entity, cease to exist because it's authorized by law to exist, but it would lose all of its funding. We're even looking at that because each of the individual ground leases, like some of the ground leases terminate prior to 2068. So you've got, it's actually much more complicated than all that. And again, just to go back to the kind of the original premise, we don't even need to get there. We don't even need to think through 2068.
Let's not.
Let me just finish though. We just need to get to 2020.
You did answer the question, which is absolutely fantastic, because I just had no idea that things would just, immediately stop, the day after. It's like the day after tomorrow. So thank you very much for that information. I really appreciate it.
Real quick, I just want to say, because it's not even about 2068, it's about 2026. Like or excuse me, 2028, when we get to 40 years. I mean, that's the first. There's a whole 40 years in there that would be a major problem if nothing were done. So the first real issue is.
What about my first question about can you be more specific? Because I only heard, the 4 items with, and really following up on Rick's question, what are the major, what are the major items that are up for discussion?
I think that's the answer. I mean, the answer is, number 1, just the term, just the year that this ends. Yeah, the master lease, the term, the year that it ends, right? It's set to expire in 2068. We need to make that number bigger. That's it. That's enough. I would be happy if that were the full extent of the discussion, but unfortunately it's not. And that's where the political horse trading comes in. And so that's where this becomes an issue between the city and the state. And I think the city is looking to HHC, and, we in REOC, or excuse me, HHC and REOC have had a number of outstanding issues over the years. The steam plant, the steam tunnel, and now the Kohler burn. So I think all of that gets kind of wrapped up into it. And honestly, even just those 3-4 issues is a lot. That is a lot to sort through, let me put it to you this way. Why should people not be able to transact their condos because Kohler Hospital doesn't use steam power anymore? These two issues are totally separate issues, and yet they've already been put into the same bucket just by virtue of geography, because we're on this little island together. But those are the issues, Kohler doesn't use steam power anymore. They stopped using the steam plant 10 years ago. It's deteriorating, it's a problem. Oh, and now they're
Okay,
gonna
I
try
get
and tie
that
that to
because
right.
yeah, no, I totally understand. Paul, I wanted to ask you a quick question. The December call, were you on the call?
Say again.
No,
what's the
Paul was
question?
not.
Oh, okay. Was anybody on this call that's on the Zoom right now? I'm just trying to find out. I just want to make sure that there was community resident representation on the call.
It was government. So it was Councilmember Menon, some folks from her staff, the mayor's office, and then REOC.
Oh, okay. So there weren't any community residents on the call.
No.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Thanks,
All
Sharon.
right.
Anything else before we move on? Let's move on to Margie, please. Thank you, Sharon.
Okay, just a couple of things, Sharon. That you've made my point. That was what I was asking before. All these meetings are going to happen, and everybody's going to agree to a plan without the residents' input, and that's just plain wrong. And it shouldn't be happening. And I don't know how we can change that because it's happened before. But the other thing, Gerald, when you mentioned that REOC's function was to develop the island, its function was to develop the island according to the general development plan. And you said, so it's set in law what we can do as far as development. And so we're protected, and we're not at all. The general development plan said that the Octagon area was supposed to be an ecological park, and it's a 500 unit apartment building. So that can get changed very instantly. So we should not lull ourselves into any kind of feeling that we're going to be okay. And the main thing I think we're all saying here, without actually saying it, the infrastructure should come first. We got enough people on the island now that we're already taxing the infrastructure. I don't have a problem with more people on the island. I have a problem with people having to wait online to get home from work every night and that kind of thing. We just don't have the infrastructure to support it yet. So I think that's all everybody is saying here.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I
Speaking for
understand.
everybody.
And I just to that point, because this is a bigger issue, I think, right? If you look at the island historically, right? And you look at, in particular, the last 20-25 years, to be perfectly frank, right, it is new development that has financed a lot of the infrastructure upgrades and improvements on the island. So take the recent renovation of Sports Park, for instance.
We don't go
REOC,
there.
well, REOC is entirely self-funded, right?
$12 million
And
we didn't. Okay.
Well, I mean,
We don't have to go
it's
there.
my understanding from speaking to some board members who take their children there some time ago that it was not a great facility before the renovation, and that they wouldn't take their children
It
there.
absolutely needed a renovation. It absolutely did not need $12 million, and we're going to start losing money as opposed to a really nice place for the residents to be able to play. But Sharon, also one other thing. Don't worry about the funding on the island, because other than throwing in some money for capital projects, what state funding do we get?
Well, that's my point, Margie.
No,
I mean,
so REOC's salaries, everything's paid. You know, that's
well,
all
yes,
paid for
from-
by us already. So
from ground rent, but also from these infusions, these large infusions of capital that we receive from developments. So that's what I'm saying
Right, but
with
I'm
this
going to
20-year period, yeah.
right, but I'm going to Sharon's point of what happens on June 15th, the last day, does our funding stop? No.
Well,
It's all our funding. It's going to keep going. The state's gonna, if the state says I'm not going to give you another nickel, what's the problem?
no, that's not true also, because the ground lease expires. So when the ground leases expire, something has to happen. So the differing terms, you know, not all the ground leases expire in 2068. Some of them expire prior to that. So you would basically be re-upping these. Let's assume you would re-up them all and that you could make them all expire on the same date, 2068, right? Come that day in 2068 to this hypothetical situation that Sharon was explaining, REOC would cease, it wouldn't cease to exist as a corporate entity, but it would lose all its funding. We would have no income, basically.
Funding from
We
where?
have,
Funding from
what's-
where?
Our funding comes from ground rents.
What
So
funding would you lose?
if the ground leases
Right, and-
expire, there's no funding, there's no ground rent.
Because you're assuming people are not going to continue to pay their rent.
No, I mean, the buildings are under no, if all these leases expire, the buildings have no legal obligation to pay REOC ground rent.
Mhm.
We're not financed by
Right.
taxes, we're not financed by the
And do you
state.
think that's what's going to happen?
But the
No, I know
mechanism
that. And
the-
my
the
whole point
mechanism
is
that-
I've been in places with,
Wait, sorry, say again? I was cutting out.
Margie, can you repeat that, please?
just, I mean, I have,
No, you've
yeah, with
frozen.
this
Margie, you've frozen us a couple
could
of
go on
times.
forever. I'll stop it now. I just don't want Sharon to be worried that we're all going to be in trouble. And sorry. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Let's go to Rick as the final speaker, and then Sharon last time, and then we'll call the evening to end.
Well, I think it's a lot more serious that if nothing is done, because if the lease expires without an extension, REOC no longer has jurisdiction or authority to manage the island at all. It reverts back to the city to manage,
Yeah,
just by the term of the lease.
but again,
Isn't
all
there
of
wa- That
I'm-
probably
I'm
won't
s-
happen, but I'm just saying that's the
and I'm sorry to keep jumping in with this, because like we don't even need to get there. We really don't. Like, this is not a problem for 60 years in the future, or 40 years in the future. This is a problem like in 3 years. That's what I'm saying. That's what we're all saying. There's a first order of business kind of problem, and it's that in 4 years, 3 years, if the ground lease is not extended, the master lease is not extended, it's going to become difficult for people to sell their condos or co-ops on the island, period. Everybody who owns a condo or co-op, it will become difficult to get financing for that.
And buildings, well, for
Maybe
their
impossible. What's
financing,
that?
and buildings, and also for buildings to do financing of their.
And also for buildings, yes. And for buildings, it's already been a problem. And some of it you can work around, but some of it you can't. The other thing too is like, even if you got some banks to become comfortable with this scenario, you're limiting your options. Now there's only 3 banks that'll lend on the island. So you're gonna pay a higher price. So even that.
Thank you. Let's take last question from Sharon.
Margie, thank you so much for that clarification. Thanks, Rick. I definitely needed that, but I'm not suggesting that we should wait. I just wanted to know, what the worst case scenario was. That's just me. So, just following up on what Margie was talking about earlier. What can the residents do?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think so far, the most effective, well, first of all, participating in meetings like this. But I was also gonna say, the most effective thing that I've seen so far from the residents is what I said was, talking to your local elected officials. It was people speaking with Councilmember Menon that they were able to elevate this issue to get onto her radar and thus to get onto the radar of the mayor. So I think that was effective. I think that the Euler process is another way to get involved. Again, the Euler process is very involved. There's all sorts of checks and balances. It requires buy-in from the community board. It requires buy-in from the local council member, from the city council, from the mayor's office. So stated otherwise, any of those points are veto points. So any one of those people, the community board, the mayor, the city council, whatever, could make demands on the process or make demands on parties involved. I think if you're looking for leverage, political leverage, it's actually quite helpful that you have to deal with Euler.
Margie, can I also hear from Margie and Howard? Is Howard Pallavi still? Howard, because you two are on the REACT board as well. I would love to hear your
Right. We've started to talk about 2068 in the Real Estate Development Advisory Committee. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes, yes.
So we have a number of long-term issues: the steam plant, the steam tunnels, 2068, which we keep placeholders for in all of our meetings to see where discussions are advancing. One of the residents who may have spoken to Julie Mannon's staff at the December meeting was me. I said that this is something that and I'm happy that many, probably other people, spoke about it too. People need to understand what the possibilities are without having to go elbow deep into all the things that work REAC finances, city finances. There's a master lease. REAC owes rent to the city. We would not like to, we would hope that we don't have to renegotiate that right now at this point in a very clumsy way, and have to deal with all the internal finances that have accumulated over all the years, with revenues between the city and the state. It would be very nice if a Gerald says we can keep the discussion fruitful for the point that we need, which is to allow a long-term viability for finances so that our buildings can get new loans. If it's a typical commercial loan that a building's holding, it's renegotiated every 10 or 15 years. Those commercial leases will be coming up within the next 5 or 10 years, quite a number of them. We would like to have a position that's good enough for those to be acceptable. All these other issues can take their time to evolve. All the extension details for the ground leases that the buildings have can take their time to evolve if we can get to this one salient position. The building's individual ground leases are not going to automatically extend beyond their terms right now. Most ground leases don't go even to 2068, but no ground lease that the building has on Roosevelt Island goes past 2068 in its own terms. So if the master lease is extended, then there's a possibility for future negotiation to extend the building's terms beyond 2068. And most likely the existing ground leases have language about the need for that negotiation built into them. So yeah, it's on our radar, and these will be public meetings, public discussions, so that the information is shared. So there's that at least. There's information that'll be shared here at the community board, I'm sure. And we'll work our way through it somehow. Can I answer any questions?
Yeah, you did. Just one quick question. In Battery Park City, are they in the same situation? Because they have an authority.
It's similar, but ultimately and just because I'm glad you brought it up. Couple quick similarities and differences, right? Their master lease, the ground lease that Battery Park City has, is from itself and to itself. So and there are other complications with Battery Park City. It's a bonding authority, et cetera. And it required legislation for them to even be able to extend the master lease. So in some ways, you know, you can get a similar idea of what's involved, right? This is a big political negotiation. It has to be approved by the state legislature, et cetera, in their case. But then the actual mechanics of this master lease are actually quite easy for them to extend because they're on both sides. For us, it's different because it's the city and the state on either side of this lease. But you also get the similarity of this big political aspect to it, right? The city and the state have to come to a negotiation, right? Imagine this happening with the previous mayor and the previous governor, right? Never gonna happen. They hated each other notoriously. So I think it's good when you look at the current situation with the current mayor and the current governor, it's definitely better than the previous. So there is this big political aspect of it too. So similar, it's a lot of people look to Battery Park City for comparison, and I would, it's good up to a point, I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. So Gerald, thank you very much for coming. This has been exactly what I was hoping for, a very full discussion about the master lease. And Howard, thank you again for coming to represent the board of directors. It's great you're here to jump in on this as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Who wants to propose a motion to call this meeting to a close?
I do.
Sharon does. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night.
Thank you.